Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever and whenever you are listening. This is We Are the One, Lincolnshire FA's official grassroots football podcast, where we talk to the amazing people who make football happen in our area, from grounds teams to coaches to referees, you name it. If you are a volunteer in grassroots football, we want to hear from you. This week, we're talking to Sean Clixby, who is the grounds person at Broughton Ravers JFC. He's also a coach. I mean, you name it, what he does at Broughton Ravers, he does the lot. We've been talking about his experience in grassroots football, from playing to coaching and now looking after the grounds at Broughton Ravers, and how they've gone from having poor pitches to some of the best in the entire country. I am with Sean Clixby from Broughton Ravers JFC. Firstly, Sean, how are we?
Not too bad, thank you. Yeah, despite the weather.
Good. Yeah, a little bit of an overcasty day today. First of all, then, Sean. So, what's your story? How did you initially get into football, but also into grounds maintenance?
Well, I've always been in football since a kid. It was my junior club as a junior myself. History of the club, actually. It started, and everyone gets this wrong, it is Ravers. People say, why is it Ravers? Well, actually, when it originally set up in the late 60s, early 70s, it was actually my dad, his age group, and his dad was part of that, setting it up, and they did raves, young discos, and that set the club up. So we've got a really big family affair to the club. Had a bit of a dip and then re-established in the late 80s, early 90s, when I was obviously a kid and played through all the junior teams. And then when I had my sons, naturally they just came in, and I mean, I'm a PE teacher by trade, so always been around coaching. And then naturally, my lads started when they were sort of 4 or 5 at the club, and that got me back involved in the club itself, coaching wise. Just started as most people do, as a coach. Took on my eldest team. And then it started there, the affiliation back to the club. The club has grown massively since that time. I think at that time when I first rejoined, we had about, I think it was 3 or 4 teams, and now it's really thriving thanks to many other volunteers as well. So yeah, progressed through. I've done different roles within the football club itself. Obviously as a coach, mentor to other coaches. My official title is the club development officer, so I'm involved in that side of the club as well. Obviously the ground maintenance side of things, that I'm also the chair of trustees of Broughton Community and Sports Association, which is a link to the football club. And we got on the FA's pitch improvement programme when it first set up. We had a massive issue on the site with the chafer grub and all the associated damage. So then, we were just crying for help. I was just a person who cut his own grass. Didn't really know anything. I knew something had to be done. I knew the ground itself wasn't in a good state. It's owned by the parish council. So eventually, long story there, I won't go into that, but eventually we worked together and we got to a stage where it was rated as very poor, which we knew. We had the evidence, and then the town council have been working with us since, along with Broughton Ravers Football Club and the cricket club. It's a combined effort on the site, and yeah, it started there. Got all the advice through the Grounds Management Association, massive help. Obviously, Links FA, the Football Foundation grants. We managed to get machinery through that, which then led us to able to actually take on the contract for the site. We actually maintained the site as volunteers, and then it's grew from there really. Put myself on courses, several of us. I'm now up to level 3 of the Groundsman course, so got all the education or some of it anyway. So yeah, and it just grew from there. So yeah.
So for those of us who potentially aren't as clued up around sort of grounds maintenance, you mentioned about chafer grub and the damage that caused. What is chafer grub?
Well, chafer grub's a larvae of a flying insect. So it's a natural occurrence. Our particular site is very open, lots of trees and fields around. So it's a natural process. Obviously, they mate at a certain time of year and then lay their eggs. And then they have this larvae, which then actually they feed on the roots of your grass, excuse me, and then in our case it's mainly birds, but it can be other wildlife, badgers, etc. They come to feed on the grubs. So yeah, it's been a headache. I mean, touch wood, over the last few years we've got the ground to a state where it's good. So the grubs are still there. There are processes we've looked at. There's nematodes. It's very expensive and hit and miss, and they can always come back. So we've gone down the route from the advice is just to get it as healthy as possible and try and keep on top of it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, what does a typical week or a typical weekend sort of look like for you? Because you've touched on really that you do an incredible amount. But in terms of from a grounds maintenance as well perspective, like how many pitches do you have on site? What does that all look like?
Yeah, so we've got let me count them. So we've got 1, 2, 3 5x5 pitches. We've got a 9v9 pitch. We have a 7v7 pitch on its own, and another one inset within another pitch. A senior 11v11 full size, a junior 11v11, and then like a floodlit training area, which one of those is a max pitch when we're desperate. So really, that more or less fills the site itself. There is a cricket square on it, which is obviously roped off, so we have to work around that. But basically, it more or less fills the whole site, and maybe sort of jig the pitches around. Yeah. So we haven't got a lot of scope to move things around, but
yeah. So what does that typical week or weekend look like for you?
Yeah, obviously it changes in different years. I mean, if you talk about these last 2 weeks, I should have just slept up there, but we've been doing our renovations. But obviously in the cutting season when the grass is growing, it's not just me. I do quite a lot of it, but there are a pool of volunteers from both the football club, the cricket club, who help cut, if you like, the basic cutting. So that's the bog standard things, but getting it at the right height and, going before it was just whoever contractor coming in and cutting it whenever. Now we've got the control of it and we can adjust height accordingly. So cuttings once a week as we get into the summer months. Obviously when we fertilise and the grass grows, potentially certain areas are twice a week. It's all down to volunteers. Then we've obviously got the sort of just the general upkeep of the ground. Again, divoting, we do that best we can. It is a public field as well. We've got to stress that. So dog walkers, just general recreation. As I've mentioned before, it's coming to this time of year, it's shared with cricket. There's a running group on. And again, so there's a lots of, balls to juggle in the air and try and keep everyone happy. But yeah, coming to this time of the year, we've just started our sort of end of season renovations. I know we're still in the season, but being a dual site, we've got to manage it and try and get our renovations in a good window, while the weather's acceptable. So I've spent 2 days solid this season. Obviously that's voluntary. Fertilising. We've literally today we've just taken delivery of 30 odd ton of top dressing, and that will be spread next week. So there's periods where it's really, heavily intense. And then there's period, obviously, you go in the winter months, we're more or less spiking every week, every other week and things like that. So it does vary. I mean, the actual line marking itself, as it's a council-owned site, we still have to hire the pitches off the council, even though we maintain them. It's, but they mark them. We sometimes go and do it to get them a bit straighter, but yeah. Initially we set out the pitches and that sort of thing, just so we know we get it right. But yeah.
Do you think, because it is quite I don't think I want to say it's quite a specialist sort of area, really. It's quite technical and it requires a lot of time, a lot of expertise. Do you think that's potentially why that might be a reason why it's slightly more difficult to find volunteer grounds people to look after the pitches?
I think probably so. It's probably a bit of an old thing that, you've got to be old and retired and, know your stuff. Well, I wouldn't say I'm old, but I'm definitely not retired. But no, I suppose you think about it, it's not rocket science. Once you start thinking about it, it's not actually, you do that this time of year, then you do that, then you do that. And when you get in a routine, it sort of comes second nature. So now I know this time of year we seed, other clubs I know may do it a little bit later, but then the sun, the hot summer comes, and then your thousands and thousands of pounds that you put in the ground don't work.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd definitely advise it go on a course. Everyone says it's always a bit standoffish, aren't they, with courses? Oh, I can't do that. Obviously, level ones are easy. It's information, and as you obviously progress up, you need to know your stuff a bit more. But yeah.
And I mean, what do you personally enjoy about sort of having such an active role in football? What impact does that have on you?
Well, I mean, sport's my life, but see, obviously from a selfish point of view, seeing my lads develop, but then seeing the club as a whole, and it's just that community. We are a community club, and seeing it grow, and to me, the ground is a big part of that. They've got a surface to play on, but there's lots of other things obviously in the background. So it's just the enjoyment of seeing people playing. Going up on a Saturday morning and just seeing the site so busy. To a point now, we've got the headache now. We're too busy, so we're working on other things now. But that's the enjoyment we get, and it's always nice to get the applause. Don't get me wrong. We've won awards, won national awards, and that's great. To get that recognition, but it's the managers, and we're often getting away managers, other managers saying, "Oh, your pictures are great today. Oh, thanks for that," that sort of thing. And you get a bit of pride from it, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've touched on the fact that you won, Grounds Team of the Year a few years ago.
Yeah.
What was that like? I mean, you said it's nice to be recognised. I
mean, we obviously won the Lincolnshire's Grounds Team of the Year, and in the same year we won the national Groundsman. We lost for words. You know what I mean? It was nice to get recognised, not just on a county level, but then at a national level, and to be invited to Birmingham and pick up the award. It was an amazing experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of all the hard work that yourself and the other volunteers have put in, it's sort of all. It's not so much making it worthwhile, because I suppose seeing the kids playing football and people enjoying playing football on the pitches that you work so hard on is what makes it worthwhile. But having those experiences of being able to win those awards and say that you're one of the best in the whole country at what you're doing is quite unique, I suppose, isn't it?
We were where we were and where we got to in a relatively short space of time, but with volunteers end of the day, and it's people who are mostly working full time are still doing voluntary roles in whether it's coaching and all secretarial work, all sorts of things. I mean, everyone's chips in.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've touched on the impact that the Grass Pits Maintenance Fund has had on this, and but I mean, just sort of dive in if you can to the impact that fund has had on the club and the quality of its pitches, and how you sort of utilise that funding.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, without that fund, we won't be anywhere near where we're at. Obviously, if I say a bag of seed costs 80 quid, this last week we put about 30 bags of seed. So you had to do the maths. I mean, any club is, unless you're, in the league, etc., you're not going to afford that. As I say, we were very fortunate to get on the programme and get our machinery. So for us as a club, yes, we volunteer our time, but we haven't then got to subcontract out to get someone in to seed it. Myself generally sits on the tractor for 12 hours a day, but at least we've got it. So without that injection of funding, no chance. We wouldn't be anywhere near where we're at. Obviously, we're now just moving into year 5 of that fund, so it's a tapered fund. So the way we set up, we did it so we cut the grass, and then the council pay our organisation to do that. Now, we don't take a wage, but that helps us sustain going forward. So it's got to have that sort of thought process of how you're going to maintain this. It's all right getting 12 grand, 14 grand a year for 3-4 years, but how are you going to do that for the rest of the time?
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, we can see how active you are on social media in terms of providing a bit of advice or sort of giving updates as to, how things are going in terms of like your ground maintenance. But I mean, what advice would you sort of have for anyone who's, interested in supporting its local club with the development, I suppose, of their grass pitches?
Yeah, I mean, only this last couple of weeks, a local club, Scotter, I know the secretary there, she contacted me, so obviously seen me on social media, and I just popped down, had a chat. They've started the process, and actually, even just by having a chat, I didn't go into detail. She just felt a lot at ease that someone that, she's known for years who is, you can do it. And it was just that encouragement, because I suppose it is daunting to not, how do I do this? Who do you contact? And actually, there is a network there. Yeah. That's how I started. I didn't know from Adam. So, I just reached out to a few people. You get talking to them. They say, use them, and then progress from there. So, yeah.
I suppose it's like anything, isn't it? It's obviously daunting trying anything, I suppose, that you're not necessarily not clued up on to start with, trying it for the first time, but then being able to have someone like yourself to sort of provide that bit of guidance, provide that bit of support, and sort of show the path, I suppose, a little bit, really. And having that person there, I suppose, is crucial, really, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I mean, we've all experienced in life where you've been told that this is how you do it by whoever it may be, whether it's a book, whether it's someone on the TV, etc. But then you think, well, how does that work in my club? How can I do that? So when you can see it in a proper, Class Broughton is a proper grassroots club. Do you know what I mean? It can be done. You just got to, it's about working together, and yeah.
2023 was the wettest year on record since records began.
Yeah.
A trend which has seemingly continued into this year.
Yeah.
What is the biggest challenge that grounds team face? Is it the weather? Is it rain?
It is really. I mean, particularly for volunteers, because obviously you're working, you're fitting in these tasks around working.
Yeah.
So obviously there's certain works that you can and can't do when it's wet or when it's too windy or this, that, and the other. So that is one of the major headaches, is working around the weather, which obviously you can't control. I mean, we're lucky at Broughton, the site itself drains very well. That's one good thing about it. I mean, it doesn't help Chafer Group because they love that sort of condition. But so for us, we haven't been affected too badly with the wet. But yeah, that is the issue, is working with Mother Nature, which, in your lap of the gods, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what other challenges do you face outside of the weather? Are there any sort of prevalent challenges?
I suppose on our particular site, and I alluded to this earlier, that we've grown that much as a football club, and I'm part of the cricket club as well. I coach for them and part of their committee, so they've grown so much as well that it's particularly get to this time of year where cricket's starting, football's still going on, and then to add to that, in our site, there's a very active running group, and then there's users of the centre which shares the car park. So for us, it's pleasing everyone and try and get the relevant works done so you can try and appease everyone at the same time. It's a public field in our case, and I'm sure many others will be in the same boat where, I've repaired goalmouth this week, and who's to know, over the weekend some lads or lasses, whoever it may be, may come and rip up all the poles. Generally they don't, to be fair. Generally they do respect stuff, but they're the sort of challenges you face with. To be honest, in our case, the town council around the land are very, very supportive. That wasn't always the case. That has changed, and I know, speaking to other clubs, that however they're set up with their lease agreements, etc., that can always be a headache. Don't always work together well, and that's important for it to work, I think.
Yeah. And do you think that the reason that the club is now almost like you said, sort of almost got too many sort of players, or there's so much demand, do you think that is partly down to, or largely down to, how good the ground is and how accessible the ground is?
I think end of the day, without the pitches, you don't have the teams, unless you go and play elsewhere. So it's a definite factor, without a doubt. I mean, would you rather play on a site that has a nice pitch and nice goals, which obviously is part of the club's gone through the grants for that, etc., and well established, well run club. You know, it's all factors together, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, like obviously we did our consultation earlier in the season, and one of the big things that came out of that in terms of like a barrier to participation was the lack of good facilities. And you know, while that is growing, that is getting better. Do you think that, you know, the quality of grass pitches and, like, you know, facilities more generally, I suppose, you know, are really important for the players' experience, I suppose?
Most definitely, yeah. I mean, you speak to any kid. I speak to my sons. Oh, we lost today because the pitch was rubbish. Well, it's same for both teams. But do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They do look at the pitch and go, "Oh, that pitch was awful today, wasn't it? Grass was too long, or it was muddy, or..." Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So you talk to the players, and I know, being a player myself, you know, you much prefer play on a you know, a nice pitch. Yeah. You know, you can play better football, etc. So I think it's a massive factor, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Which sort of emphasises the need and the you know, the importance of the role that I suppose you have. Obviously, it's not just the only role you have, but the importance of, you know, volunteer grounds teams that are working so hard to get these pitches in good quality.
I think there's, I mean, I wear many hats just within the football club, and, you know, I often do have headaches to even, you know, putting one hat on, taking one hat off, because I'm saying to coaches, look, you shouldn't be using this area. Yeah, but we've got to do this. And, do you know what I mean? I think the message is getting there, and I think eventually this will grow and people will understand that resting pitches is important. Resting certain areas, not, you know, moving your goals out of the goal mouth when you're training, and just little things like that. You know, trying not to do drills in the same place all the time. You know, just things like that, which, you know, when I was a coach, I probably never thought about it. You know, just a coach, but now, you know, you can see the rewards of doing it. So I suppose it's educating the coaches mainly, which is difficult at times, because, again, they're all volunteers, and, you know, they're in it because they want to play football or coach the football.
You know, who's your inspiration for doing what you do? Because as we've touched on so many times, that you do so much. But who's that person? Or, you know, there might not be one, there might be multiple people who sort of inspire you to decide to do what you do.
Who inspires me?
Tough question,
isn't it? Who inspires me? Well, I suppose I look back at my own family. You know, speak my mum, my dad, my grandparents. They've always been that type of people that they will volunteer their time, you know, and do it right as well. It's not just doing it; it's actually doing it for a purpose and sticking by your beliefs and keeping going. But I mean, ultimately, I've done it for my kids as well. You know, that's why I've always been involved in it. But, you know, particularly from a selfish point of view, why do I at Broughton want decent facilities, decent teams, decent structures? Because I want my kids to come through a system that I experience in some ways. I was back in the 80s, 90s where things weren't quite as good, but do you know what I mean? There's structures there, and it's the legacy going forward. You know, it's not things we're doing, particularly in Broughton now, and not just for now, which my kids are coming towards the end of the junior football, but it's potentially, you know, them as adults, their kids, other kids. You know, it's planning now for the next 10, 20, 30 years. And, you know, that I can hopefully sit back and be reading my paper and going, there you go, looking at someone else doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've sort of touched on, you know, the good structures and, you know, building that legacy. And I've seen a lot recently about, you know, embedding youth voice within Broughton Ravers. Why is that important, and what's that look like so far?
It's on the back of attending the meeting just before Christmas at Links FA, and it was presented to us, and I thought, yeah, that's great. So I took it back to our committee. I said, look, you know, this is a big thing. I mean, I'm come from a teaching background, so I was used to getting the school council voice. So I said, look, I don't mind leading on it, wear another hat, but, you know, we'll put it out there and see what happens. I think we've got regularly about eight or nine of the players from a mixture of all different teams. And we've had, 3 or 4 meetings now, to a point where they've got their own, you know, chairperson, their own secretary that I sort of oversee. They've organised their own. They're going to be launching their own Instagram page to get, to reach out to the players themselves. It's all right, us as a club putting things on Facebook, but kids these days don't look at Facebook, they look at Instagram. So we've listened to them, and they're going to do that. We've got a tournament. We're holding our first ever tournament at Broughton this coming weekend. Mark Fox, our secretary, has done amazingly, and we're going to be buzzing to see that, and they're going to be helping on the refreshment stall, and going forward to our Ravers Day, our presentation day, they're going to be getting involved in that. So generally, they're just getting involved in the club, and it's been a voice, for the club. What do you want? It's all right, us as adults going, oh, we think you need this, but,
Yeah. And do you think not only does that improve the player experience, obviously now, but then in terms of, like you sort of touched on, in terms of future-proofing, they could potentially be the next club secretary, they could be the next coach.
Yeah, that's it. And that's how we sort of approached it. We said, look, you can start having a go at this, and, it's all right in, like I say, who knows, 5 years' time, some of them maybe, start taking on these roles, because, few and far between people that will give up the time, especially in this day and age, where life's so hectic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm presuming that you're seeing really positive impact already then in terms of embedding that youth voice, and it's probably something that you'd recommend other clubs maybe looking down the route of?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. As I say, our tournament this weekend, some are coming down helping with the car parking and things like that. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. In terms of what the future looks like for you and for the club, what do you think that looks like, or what do you hope it looks like?
Well, I mean, we're growing again. I think next year already we've got another girls team, and that's a big part. The club has really focused on, obviously developing their, I say normal, that's the wrong word, but their normal pathway. Yeah. We've started with the Wildcats, I'm going to say 3 years ago. We're now to a stage where in September there'll be 3 established, maybe even 4. Actually, let's talk about another one already. Girls only teams, which is amazing to see. Success bring success. Really, they'll see them doing it. They want to do it. We pride ourselves particularly on the referees. We've got a core now group of our own referees, so we can more or less do that. So we're developing a club all the way through. It's not just the players. We really push the coaches. So part of my role is to develop the coaching, to get them through the relevant qualifications quickly, in the right order, and support them through. So, the development of the next group coming up, the sort of a coaching team ready to take them on, and that's been the same for the last sort of 3 or 4 years. And facilities, I mean, we're looking now. I mentioned, we're outgrown at the site. So as the charity that I chair, Broughton Community Sports Association, we've leased land next door, another 12 acres of land. So we've got planning permission. We're just discharging that for a 3G AstroTurf and more car parking, and then eventually more grass pitches. So,
the future looks bright for Broughton Ravers.
Well, yeah, not just Broughton Ravers, the community itself.
And you've touched on this key word, I think, throughout, is community.
Yeah.
And who are the people who, obviously it's not just yourself, it is the whole community that makes it all possible, from the coaches, from other volunteers, grounds team. Who are the people who make this all happen, I suppose, at Broughton Ravers?
Well, the dedicated committee, obviously. Patrick Harrison, the chair, he has driven it forward over the last few years. Mark Fox, secretary. We've got a good core team there, obviously safeguarding officer, etc. But yeah, everyone, we pride ourselves on being a club. When I first rejoined Broughton Ravers, it was teams. It was they did that. They were called the same, different kit, etc., etc. We really made a big emphasis. We are a club. We fundraise together. We do, we try and do everything together to help each other. So if one needs help, we're there. And I have experienced other clubs, and obviously not necessarily run like that. All right, that's up to them. But you just think that. So I think that is the key to our success as a club, is how we work together. And we don't always see eye to eye. You're never going to, but that's good in some respects, because you've got that good conversation that, and opinions that you can work to.
Yeah, and it shows there's that room for growth then, doesn't it? I mean, you don't get growth without a little bit of sort of differing opinion, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And that's the idea of committees, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I'm really keen just to finish up on to bring it sort of back around, I guess, to like the grounds maintenance side of thing, and how other clubs can, I guess, start that process, because there'll be people listening to this thinking, wow, that sounds amazing. We need to be looking to do this at our club. I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, that potentially started with the pitch power report and building from there.
Yeah, absolutely. It was just, I think I reached out to Links SA at the time. Can you help us? There must be something out there. I think I'd maybe read something on Twitter or something. There was something there, and we went from there. Pitch power report, because that gives you the evidence, and that's the key. That's what we found. I knew the pitches we had were poor. The owner, the parish council at the time, they're fine. They've always been fine. No, they're not. It's not just my word. I could tell you, but I didn't have the evidence. You have the evidence written there. It's not me saying it. It's the professionals that are saying it. And then you have the evidence, and then that opens up doors then to the funding opportunities, which there are obviously through Football Foundation, and then the training, etc. Then you can get on, and it sort of
and like I say, it literally opens those doors to more and to growth and all these different funding revenues, whether it be for your machinery, whether it be for storage containers, anything like that. There's, I think, potentially people maybe don't even realise how much is available in terms of through funding.
Yeah, definitely. Foundation. Yeah.
I mean, is it just machinery that you've got through the foundation, or is it?
We got the first grant was the machinery, so we got the tractor, the cutting deck, the multi-sport tool, seeder, and fertiliser. So that was our first grant, and that was the old grant where it was only up to 67%, was it? And we had to source the rest ourselves. I think it's up to 75% now, I believe. Yeah. So that that was even before that we missed the boat there, but we fundraised to get that. Then we obviously went on to the extra, the enhanced grass pitch maintenance fund, which enables us to get the consumables, etc., to afford that. And then we got recommended a deep slitter, because we needed to aerate more. So again, we applied for a grant through that. The football club themselves has gone down the line. They've got grants for the football goals. We've actually sourced our own container through another grant, not through the Football Foundation, but again, we did look at that at one point as a potential, but didn't actually need to go down that road. So yeah, we've accessed bits and bobs on the way.
Absolutely. Sean, it has been absolutely brilliant to sit and chat to you and sort of get to sort of sit in your world, I guess, for a little bit. And, from my perspective, definitely to understand, not just the ground side of the thing, but everything that happens at Broughton Ravers. I mean, you don't necessarily, you see all these amazing things happening from Broughton Ravers, but to then sit down and talk with you about it and understand where the club is going as well, it sounds absolutely amazing. And I can only say thank you for everything that you're doing, because you're making football happen in your area. So I think there's going to be a lot of people who are incredibly thankful and grateful for everything that you do as well, and everything that the committee does at the club as well.
Yeah, so it's not just me. There's a team as well. Yeah. But yeah, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.